Islamic Jihad and Hamas announced that they will transfer an abducted body they supposedly located north of Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip at 8 p.m. Israel time. Like previous releases, the body will be received by the IDF and transferred for a forensic analysis. There are currently 4 hostages still being held in captivity. And meanwhile, the ceasefire is holding in Gaza, but the southern city of Rafah remains a flashpoint. ILTV's Deborah Klein has the latest.
Over the past 24 hours, IDF troops eliminated 4 terrorists along the Yellow Line in Gaza. In Rafah, soldiers identified 4 armed operatives emerging from underground tunnels where hundreds of gunmen remain trapped. 3 gunmen were struck and killed with no injuries to IDF personnel. And in a separate incident in Khan Yunis, troops opened fire on another terrorist who crossed into Israeli-controlled territory, removing an immediate threat. The army says these terrorists were part of the approximately 200 terrorists that are still hiding in the, quote, terror pockets in Rafah. Additional IDF strikes targeted houses and terror infrastructure beyond the Yellow Line. The latest clash comes after Israel and the U.S. reached a deal to deport 200 Hamas terrorists from the tunnels, but no country has yet agreed to accept them. Israeli officials say that any decision will be made in coordination with Washington. Elsewhere in Gaza, efforts are continuing to locate the bodies of the remaining 4 Israeli hostages. The International Red Cross entered the Yellow Line in search of the remains, with Hamas terrorists being seen in the streets along with bulldozers and other heavy machinery in an apparent effort to uncover the Israeli hostages' remains.
And U.S. President Donald Trump has sent a letter to Israeli President Isaac Herzog requesting a full pardon for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in his ongoing corruption trial. The letter was made public by the U.S. president, and the issue is now on Trump's agenda after he first raised his appeal to Herzog in the Knesset last month. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
In his letter to President Herzog, President Trump described the case against Prime Minister Netanyahu as a political, unjustified prosecution and called on President Herzog to let Netanyahu unite Israel by pardoning him. Trump went on to praise Netanyahu as a formidable and decisive wartime prime minister and said his leadership was crucial in the recent peace efforts in the region. Herzog's office responded that any pardon request must follow established legal procedures and can only be submitted by Netanyahu or his family, a step that has not yet been taken. The letter follows Trump's November 2nd comments on CBS News, where he said his administration would help out with Netanyahu's trial. The Trump letter sparked political debate in Israel. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir supported Trump's call, while opposition leader Yair Lapid posted that Israeli law requires an admission of guilt before a pardon can be granted. Netanyahu faces corruption charges in 3 cases, including breach of trust, fraud, and bribery. In his letter to Herzog, Trump described his plea as a key topic from his October 13th speech in the Knesset.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon?
In that same speech, Trump claimed the pardon issue was unplanned.
By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who the hell cares about that?
The Trump letter has been received by President Herzog. Now the question is, how will President Trump respond if his request is rejected by the Israeli president?
And joining us now with more on U.S. President Donald Trump's appeal to the Israeli president to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is advocate Michael Parham, vice chairman of the board of the Movement for Quality Government. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
So this is quite unprecedented, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a first, I think, of a U.S. president making such a request. I mean, what do you make of this?
Yeah, it is unprecedented that the president of a foreign country would be making the request of the president of Israel. We don't have any precedent for this, but this is a president without precedent, you might say.
Yeah. And, you know, it's no secret that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump share a very close friendship, a very close relationship. But is there something perhaps more going on here? You know, why would Trump do this for Netanyahu?
Well, a lot of people are asking themselves that question. He certainly knows something about the case. He's been given an update, and somebody has helped him formulate that letter. Somebody has put into his mind that this is lawfare, similar to what he believes he encountered in the United States. I don't believe that's the case. But then people say, okay, well, if he's going to do a favor for the president of a foreign country or the prime minister of a foreign country, what is he getting in return? He's a very transactional president. So there are many, many question marks surrounding this unprecedented move.
Many question marks, although at the end of the day, it could just be because of their close friendship. I mean, we really just don't know at the moment.
Well, you know, one of the positive aspects, there are many aspects to this whole situation, but one of the positive aspects is the very close relationship between the U.S. and Israel. There's no doubt about it that that relationship has been tremendously supportive of Israel, and I think is very helpful in Israel in combating, after 2 years, and emerging what I would say to be victorious against its multiple enemies. So it's nice to see that that close relationship does exist. And I wouldn't, you know, be cynical about that, because we've been through a very difficult period. And I would also add that most of the people, maybe even a great majority of the people, would like this trial to be resolved one way or another. So this is a short cut or a short circuit, which I don't think will fly, but it does echo, I believe, sentiment that, you know, this trial is dragged on way too long and should come to a conclusion.
And, you know, we heard President Trump ask the president for a pardon during sort of an impromptu moment in his speech to the Israeli Knesset, which he said really was just sort of off the fly. Now it's official. There's an official letter. So how likely is it that President Herzog will comply with this request? And what does it mean, you know, from a legal perspective? I mean, what happens next?
Well, I think that he made it somewhat of an analogous situation in calling it lawfare, an unjust prosecution of the president. There's a huge difference between Israel and the U.S., and I would make 2 points in this regard. One, there are no political appointees here. The legal system doesn't have elected officials. The Attorney General who initiated the lawsuit was appointed by the Prime Minister, was his close ally in many respects. I don't think you can characterize this as lawfare. The other thing is that the president's power, in Israel's president's power, is very broad. But the law is very clear. The president can pardon an offender. He can pardon a criminal. That's his power of pardon. So there is a question whether, and the procedure is usually that the person himself asks the president, which Netanyahu hasn't done.
So just one minor correction. You said that the Attorney General was appointed by the Prime Minister, but I think this particular Attorney General was actually appointed by the previous administration and was allowed to stay on, although...
Right. The case was initiated by Avichai Mandelblit. Let me just clarify that if it's not. Avichai Mandelblit was appointed at the recommendation of Netanyahu. There is a process for appointing it. And was not considered a political appointment, although it was considered an appointment of somebody who was very close to Netanyahu. Yeah. And so the fact that this person was the one, the current Attorney General inherited the trials. She wasn't in to initiate the trials. So she cannot be held responsible for initiating the proceedings. And the fact that it's taking so long for the courts to run its course, for the trials to come to a conclusion, is something I think that we have to deal with. I think that's something that also in the U.S. they don't quite understand, how many years trials can go on. I think it's been, but the prime minister conducted a war and was on trial at the same time, and in many regards successfully. So who knows? Maybe it's the right thing to do.
Absolutely, and President Trump certainly thinks so.
I cynically say that.
Yeah. President Trump certainly thinks it's the right move. Advocate Michael Parham, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Have a good one.
Turn up the volume. I am Chaim Biros, Mayor of Modi'in and Chairman of the Federation of Local Authorities in Israel. It's time to join us in Modi'in, City of the Future. We are waiting to welcome you to our young, modern, innovative city with great schools and, of course, all the benefits. Hope you will make Aliyah soon and join our Olim community who are so happy to call Modi'in their home. Now is the time to make Aliyah. See you soon.
Israel is strong and growing. Now more than ever is the time to make Aliyah.
Former hostages Aviva and Keith Siegel testified before the UN Committee Against Torture in Geneva, recounting their harrowing experiences in Gaza. Aviva Siegel, held for 51 days, told of young female hostages who were repeatedly sexually assaulted by Hamas terrorists. She described the trauma these girls faced, including being threatened with death if they spoke out. One of the girls was taken to the bathroom and assaulted, Siegel said. She had to endure horrific abuse and was forced to pretend everything was fine. Aviva's testimony highlighted the brutal conditions and crimes committed against hostages, bringing international attention to Hamas's treatment of captives in Gaza. The Siegel's statements come as part of global efforts to document abuses and seek accountability for the terror attacks of October 7th. Let's take a listen.
I'm a witness of one of the girls that was with us, that the Hamas terrorist took her into the bathroom, told her to get undressed, came into the shower with her, and forced her to do oral sex on her. I'm a witness of one of the girls that was forced to take a shower. She's 16 years old. She's never ever showed anybody her body. The Hamas terrorist just stood there and stared at her and smiled.
And one of Israel's most influential security figures of the past 5 years, Mossad Director David Barnea, has announced he will step down in June 2026. Barnea, who led some of Israel's most sensitive intelligence operations and served as a key architect of the hostage talks in the war with Hamas, formally notified Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of his decision. ILTV's India Naftali has more for us. India, what can you tell us about Barnea's decision?
Well, Lidar, what we do know is that for months, David Barnea has been at the center of Israel's most critical negotiations, from the peace talks to the return of the hostages. But he's also the man who oversaw the famous pager operation. So yes, after years of being one of the most important decision makers in Israel, the Mossad director says his time leading the agency will come to an end next year.
Mossad Director David Barnea has formally asked to step down in June 2026, with the Prime Minister's office confirming that the search for his successor will begin in the coming weeks. Barnea has led the Mossad since 2021 and is the last senior defense official still in office from the time of the October 7th attacks. Unlike other security chiefs who resigned, Barnea was not considered directly responsible for the intelligence failures of that day. In his tenure, Barnea oversaw high-profile successes, including the pager operation against Hezbollah and multiple other covert missions deep inside enemy territory. But he also became a critical player in the hostage negotiations, serving as Israel's lead representative in talks in Doha, Cairo, and Europe. Barnea was involved in every major stage of the hostage deals. 3 candidates are now being considered to replace him. The first is Major General Roman Goffman, the Prime Minister's military secretary. Second is the Mossad Deputy Director, known only under the alias Aleph. And third is a senior operations official referred to as Chet. In the Mossad, the real names of high-ranking officials are classified for security reasons, so they are publicly identified by a single Hebrew letter. Once a new director is chosen, there will be a planned transition to ensure a smooth handover of responsibilities. In general, most Mossad directors serve anywhere between 4 and 6 years. Barnea had earlier requested that his term not be extended beyond its original timeframe. His time leading the Mossad is viewed as one of the most intense and complex periods in the agency's history.
And the Israel Security Forces said today it arrested around 40 Palestinian terrorists from Bethlehem that were planning imminent attacks against Israelis. Meanwhile, the IDF is conducting a huge 2-division exercise in Judea and Samaria in what was described by the army as an unprecedented drill for operation readiness on the Eastern Front. While joining the exercise, IDF Chief Eyal Zamir also condemned recent violent incidents in the territories in which extremist Israeli civilians attacked Palestinians. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir visited the exercise in Judea and Samaria and the Jordan Valley involving the Judea and Samaria Division and the Gilad Brigade. He was accompanied by Central Command Chief Avi Bluth. During the visit, he held a situational brief with field commanders and underscored the importance of operational readiness in the theater. The exercise, Zamir said, is the first of its kind in the IDF. It tests the new Eastern Division established as a lesson from the war. One of the lessons from October 7th is that responsibility for defense and our security concept must change. We prevent threats while they are forming. That is what we are doing here. Zamir said the scenarios we have practiced in recent days are ones we must never allow to happen. Zamir said, we must act to neutralize the threat before it reaches our doorstep. We will reinforce forces where needed to continue disrupting terror and prevent the next attack. The IDF chief also condemned recent violent incidents in which extremist Israeli civilians attacked Palestinians, saying, I strongly reject these acts. The IDF will not tolerate a criminal minority that damages a law-abiding society. These actions cross a red line, divert our forces from their mission, and contradict our values. We will deal with them severely until justice is served. Video from a recent attack on an industrial zone near the village of Beit Lit shows dozens of extremists setting vehicles on fire. During the incident, 10 vehicles were torched, along with a warehouse and a plastic factory. 4 Palestinians were reportedly injured in beatings and stones thrown by extremist elements. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has now spoken out on the issue of Israeli extremist violence, saying there's some concern about events in the West Bank undermining efforts to maintain the ceasefire in Gaza.
And moving to another front, as tensions begin to heat up again with the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Iranian regime is putting on a show of strength, releasing propaganda videos in Hebrew and showcasing its ballistic missile reserve. But the reality on the ground tells a different story. The details in the following report.
Iran has created a new Hebrew language propaganda film that boasts of its supposed victories over Israel during the 12-day war last June. The 26-minute video, titled Missiles Over Bazan, was made by Iran's Tasnim news agency and presents the story of the Iranian attack on the Bazan oil refinery in Haifa. As such, the video sourced footage of missile hits from social media and also includes interviews with senior Iranian officials, all claiming they caused heavy and significant damage to Israel. According to Tasnim, the film aims to present the truth on the battlefield in contrast to the image conveyed by Western and Israeli media. Adding to this projected image of strength, Iran opened a missile exhibition in Tehran on Wednesday to mark the country's Aerospace Week. Footage showed missiles, drones, and other military equipment on display at the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force Museum.
خودمون شروع کردیم زمانی که ما تحریم بودیم، سیم خاردار هم نمیتونستیم وارد کنیم، شروع کردیم به ساخت این موشک‌هایی که اینجا می‌بینید و امروزه در همه حوزه‌های زمین به زمین موشکی که مورد نیاز باشه خودمون می‌سازیم، طراحی می‌کنیم و استفاده می‌کنیم که شما تو عملیات‌های وعده صادق 1 و 2 و 3 نمونه‌های اینها رو.
Indeed, Israel has raised serious concerns that since the 12-day war, Iran is racing to rebuild its ballistic missile program. program and its nuclear program, pouring billions into the endeavor, even at the expense of its own citizens. Currently, Iran is grappling with its worst water crisis in decades, with officials warning that Tehran, its capital city of over 10 million people, may soon be uninhabitable.
اگر باران نباره ما در تهران در آذر ماه باید جیره بندی کنیم. تازه معلومه جیره بندی کردیم اگر بازم نباره که دیگه اصلا آب نداریم. باید تهران رو خالی کنن.
The Iranian people are already struggling with the weight of a crippled economy due to sanctions over the regime's nuclear program, as well as recurrent electricity, gas, and water shortages, which the regime fears could lead to massive internal unrest. And so, as the Ayatollahs try to convey business as usual to the world, the latest water shortage and the regime's inability to provide basic needs for its citizens shows a very different reality.
And in other news, Americans for Ben-Gurion University has launched David Ben-Gurion Speaks, an AI-powered video series that brings Israel's founding prime minister to life. Let's take a look.
Hello, friends. I am David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister of Israel. I believed Israel's future would be tested in the Negev, this vast desert covering half our land. It offered space for Jewish immigrants, for agriculture, for industry. For me, it was the ultimate test of the Zionist spirit, taking barren land and making it bloom. Here, security, growth, and destiny would converge. In 1969, a university was founded to be the engine of the Negev's growth. After my passing in 1973, it took my name, Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. And what became of this university is a story I will tell you next.
And a major shakeup could be coming in Israel's media landscape. Defense Minister Israel Katz has announced that Army Radio, the iconic military station broadcasting since 1950, will be shut down by March 2026. Katz says the station has strayed from its original mission as a voice for soldiers, turning into what he called a platform for anti-IDF opinions. He argues the move is about restoring focus and morale and national unity, not silencing critics. The decision comes amid broader government reforms aimed at restructuring Israel's media environment. Supporters call it a necessary reset. Critics warn it threatens press freedom. Army Radio, known for its unique blend of military reporting, music, and cultural programs, has been a training ground for generations of Israeli journalists. Press groups and station leaders have vowed to fight the closure in court, calling it, quote, a blow to democracy. For now, the plan still needs full government approval and could face legal challenges before March. The Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas announced that they will transfer an abducted body they supposedly located north of Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip at 8 p.m. Israel time. Like previous releases, the body will be received by the IDF and transferred for a forensic analysis. There are currently 4 hostages still being held in captivity. And meanwhile, the ceasefire is holding in Gaza, but the southern city of Rafah remains a flashpoint. ILTV's Deborah Klein has the latest.
Over the past 24 hours, IDF troops eliminated 4 terrorists along the Yellow Line in Gaza. In Rafah, soldiers identified 4 armed operatives emerging from underground tunnels where hundreds of gunmen remain trapped. 3 gunmen were struck and killed with no injuries to IDF personnel. And in a separate incident in Khan Yunis, troops opened fire on another terrorist who crossed into Israeli-controlled territory, removing an immediate threat. The army says these terrorists were part of the approximately 200 terrorists that are still hiding in the, quote, terror pockets in Rafah. Additional IDF strikes targeted houses and terror infrastructure beyond the Yellow Line. The latest clash comes after Israel and the U.S. reached a deal to deport 200 Hamas terrorists from the tunnels, but no country has yet agreed to accept them. Israeli officials say that any decision will be made in coordination with Washington. Elsewhere in Gaza, efforts are continuing to locate the bodies of the remaining 4 Israeli hostages. The International Red Cross entered the Yellow Line in search of the remains, with Hamas terrorists being seen in the streets, along with bulldozers and other heavy machinery, in an apparent effort to uncover the Israeli hostages' remains.
And U.S. President Donald Trump has sent a letter to Israeli President Isaac Herzog requesting a full pardon for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in his ongoing corruption trial. The letter was made public by the U.S. president, and the issue is now on Trump's agenda after he first raised his appeal to Herzog in the Knesset last month. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
In his letter to President Herzog, President Trump described the case against Prime Minister Netanyahu as a political, unjustified prosecution and called on President Herzog to let Netanyahu unite Israel by pardoning him. Trump went on to praise Netanyahu as a formidable and decisive wartime prime minister and said his leadership was crucial in the recent peace efforts in the region. Herzog's office responded that any pardon request must follow established legal procedures and can only be submitted by Netanyahu or his family, a step that has not yet been taken. The letter follows Trump's November 2nd comments on CBS News, where he said his administration would help out with Netanyahu's trial. The Trump letter sparked political debate in Israel. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir supported Trump's call, while opposition leader Yair Lapid posted that Israeli law requires an admission of guilt before a pardon can be granted. Netanyahu faces corruption charges in 3 cases, including breach of trust, fraud, and bribery. In his letter to Herzog, Trump described his plea as a key topic from his October 13th speech in the Knesset.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon?
In that same speech, Trump claimed the pardon issue was unplanned.
By the way, that was not in the speech, as you probably know. But I happen to like this gentleman right over here, and it just seems to make so much sense. You know, whether we like it or not, this has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. This has been one of the greatest wartime presidents. And cigars and champagne, who